Hola, welcome. I hope y'all are doing well. My name is Agustin Toledo. I'm a sophomore at San University, and I'm from Montevideo, Uruguay. For those who don't know where Uruguay is, it's a very small country in South America, next to Argentina. And today I'll be talking a little bit about my paper that I wrote for one of my classes. And you can see the title right here on the screen, which is Cuando, tiranía es ley, la revolución es orden, social justice through linguistic revolution. The quote here is by a very well-known artist, Residente, a Puerto Rican rapper who's an advocate for social justice as well. And I found it very relevant to use this quote right here. And you will see this as I continue with my presentation. So for you to see what I'll be talking about, here's my table of contents. I'll start by talking about my first experience at a writing center, to then continue to talk about social justice in the writing center and what's necessary for it to be achieved. Then I'll be talking about CERTO, the resolution, code switching, to then transition into translingualism as the alternative and the way to apply translingualism through code meshing. Lastly, I'll be talking about my next steps in this work. So, let me tell you a little bit about my first experience in the writing center. I was a high school student. I was studying in New Mexico. I was in an international boarding school with people from all over the world. There were more than 100 nationalities on that campus. And I had an assignment that was for a history class. It was about the Russian Revolution. I love history. It's one of my favorite subjects, and it was at that moment as well. I really like the Russian Revolution too. It's one of my favorite topics. And I was very confident about this paper, about this assignment, but I was not confident about my writing, and I was not confident about my writing in English. So I went to the writing center, and I was hoping to get some help, of course, but it did not go well. My poor command of the English language, the tutor's attitude did not make it possible for me to really take anything from that was positive. And it was not only that I couldn't express what I wanted to write on my paper, but it was also very frustrating because I couldn't even express to the tutor what I was trying to say, what my ideas were in English. So after this, I started thinking about it, and since I'm a very big advocate for social justice in my life, just in general, I started thinking also about it in writing centers. And luckily, I had the opportunity to take a class last semester to become a writing center tutor here at St. Lawrence. And this paper was actually for that class. When I started it, I started by saying to myself, I don't see writing centers just as a way to help other students. I see it as places where social justice can be achieved. In order to achieve it, it is important to point out 3 characteristics that I listed right here. First of all, it needs to be student-based. So having a focus on the 2T as an overall writer and how to help them in the most effective way. Secondly, it needs to be collaborative. So there should not be any unequal power dynamics between the tutor and the 2T. There should be an equal conversation so both parties can be benefited from this tutorial. And these 2 aspects, actually, these 2 characteristics, can be achieved through a Burkean parallel model, which was introduced by Andrea Lunsford. However, there's one more aspect of a writing center that I think is essential to achieve social justice, and this is the expression of every aspect of one's identity. And in order to talk a little bit more about this, I want to mention the student rights to their own language resolution, or search of resolution. This resolution addressed linguistic discrimination, and it advocated for the right of students to express their identities. However, one of the final assertions of the CCCC on this document was that, and I'm paraphrasing, it is necessary to prepare students for occupations that demand formal writing in standard English. So the CCC here is advocating for code switching as a way for students to not only thrive in these settings, but also to express their identities. But I find a pretty big problem right here, and Vershana Shanti-Young actually makes a very meaningful and accurate comparison in Now We Straight, an argument against code switching, where he says that the idea that two different dialects are equal but cannot be combined in certain situations supports the logic that different races cannot coexist in certain settings. And this logic was actually held by the Jim Crow legislations. And just as Warren stated in Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954, separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. And this also applies to languages and to dialects. Let me put it this way: the command of standard English as a requirement for jobs and for college admissions only represents the power dynamics that are created and put in place by the social group that's on top. And that's on top because they had the possibility of climbing up the social ladder. And the objective of this group, after doing so, was to prevent others from doing the same. So in short, the elites are powerful because they made it to the top of the building, and they also made sure to destroy the ladder. So the alternative to code switching would be translingualism. And this is a term that Suresh Kanagaraja defines as treating languages as always in contact and mutually influencing each other with emerging meanings and emerging grammars. And I have an example of this in Spanish, actually. The RAE, which is the institution in charge of ensuring the stability of the Spanish language, recently added the term tuitear to Spanish dictionaries. Tuitear coming from Twitter, from tweeting, the social media, right? This is an example of an Anglicism or Anglicismo in Spanish. However, you do not see Spanish-isms used in a formal manner or setting in the United States and in the US American society. And I want you to think about this, and I want to ask you, why do you think this is the case? And just reflect on that as I go on with my presentation. So in order to apply translingualism, it's important to use code meshing as an alternative to code switching. And this is a concept that was introduced by Vershana Shanti-Young, and it allows students to communicate effectively by merging their dialects instead of switching from one to the other depending on the occasion and depending on the setting. So let me put it this way. Asking a student to write in a dialect that is not their own is like asking a goalkeeper to play as a striker, and we're talking about soccer here. It is not just for the player who has been practicing and mastering in goalkeeping for however years of their life to switch to a different position, asking to leave behind all those skills that they acquired. And in the same way, asking a student to write in a different dialect or language is also unfair. So think about it this way. If a student has been speaking and writing Chicano English their whole life, it's unfair to ask her to disregard those skills from Chicano English when they're writing in Standard English, for example, which is the dominant dialect in the US American academia. So, the implementation of code meshing in the writing center would allow the students to truly own their writing, and talking to the tutor about all this is a good way to then transmit it in a way that's effective and that they're really expressing what they want to express on their papers, on their assignments, on their presentations, whatever it might be. This ability to express themselves will also enhance and increase creativity and productivity, and it would make it way easier for the tutor and for the tutee to talk about the writing and to make the most out of the session. And you might be wondering, if it's in the same language, then there's really no problem in understanding a different dialect. It's just a matter of form. And I think effectiveness should be prioritized over correctness. But even if the student expresses themselves in a different language, that also allows the tutor to ask and to learn and to understand what the tutee is saying in their own language. And what does this mean? This just means that it would be beneficial for both parties, since the tutee would be talking comfortably and the tutor would be also learning way more about the tutee. If this was the case for me during my first tutorial as a tutee, talking about the Russian Revolution, if I had the chance to talk about it in Spanish, it would have been so helpful for me, and I would have gained so much from that session, and I would also have gotten a way better grade. So, in conclusion, both translingualism as an umbrella term and code meshing as the application of translingualism are essential to achieve social justice in the writing center. And I wanted to include this quote because this, of course, is relevant to my presentation, and this is what I thought all the time during that session about the Russian Revolution and about my history paper. Sé cómo decir esto en español. I know how to say this in Spanish. How can I express it without losing any of the meaning in English? Or can I express it in Spanish and then try to explain it in English and find a way to connect as a tutee with my tutor? The next steps for me in this work are, first of all, to create a plan of action, and I hope to collaborate with professors, with mentors as well. And after creating a plan of action to introduce this to the writing center and apply it effectively to the writing center, I would also like to work to take it from this setting to the classroom setting and see if that is possible and is an advantage to any multilingual student like myself, and if that can be possible in the hopefully short run. But of course, those are changes that need time, that need a lot of policy changes as well. This is essential since it's very important to achieve social justice for multilingual students to be able to express themselves in the most effective way possible and to be able to express every aspect of their identity. I will always continue to advocate for social justice, from the writing center to the classroom to the streets, from my country to the United States, because cuando la tiranía es ley, La revolución es orden. Thank you. Right here you can see my bibliography. You can see all the works that I used for this presentation. And that's it. I hope you have a great day and take it easy.